Enjoyed that. That was that's Tune Up by Miles Davis. So I had a bit of a technical glitch with this week 13, so I've decided to just upload the content again. It disappeared, so here I am again, and I'm going to summarise the stuff that we did in week 13 Sunday Q&A, just so that there isn't a hole in the archive on YouTube. And also because some of the things that I wanted to cover in today's session are going to connect to what we're going to do next week. So there's basically three topics, and the first of which was an analysis of the tune Stella by Starlight. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to relate everything to the tonic key. It's a standard that you should really know. Most players who are studying jazz will tackle this tune at some stage. And it can be quite complex because it's got a number of unusual chord movements in there. It starts on a half diminished chord, just for right out the bat. So that's kind of like, for some players, that's a tricky thing because the vocabulary over half diminished chords is often lacking. So I'm going to show you how we can get around that. And then we're going to look at some arpeggios, superimposition. And then we're also going to look at some ways to expand our vocabulary. So let's make a start by taking a look at Stella by Starlight. That's our first thing. So here we are again, and we're going to take a little look at the tune Stella by Starlight. Thanks, Tony, for the question and the suggestion. This kind of a sort of deeper look at harmony can be very useful because we'll see certain traits here that you'll also find in other tunes. What's a little bit unusual about Stella by Starlight is the first chord. In fact, if you watch a video I've suggested in the past, Peter Bernstein, he argues that Stella, this chord here, should really be not as it's presented in the real book, like so. So it's often found in real books and jazz chord charts and whatnot as an E half diminished to an A7 of some description, and it could be an E half diminished with a natural second or with no second. But Peter Bernstein raises the suggestion that in the original tune it's actually this diminished chord, And to be fair, he's most likely right. So that might be something you want to explore. Andy McKenzie, thanks Andy again, sent me the music, the actual audio from the film that this tune comes from. As a lot of those tunes did, they come from shows, musicals, films, you name it, you know. And it's absolutely a diminished chord. But that said and done, we have to play. We have to follow the conventions. Sometimes a reharmonization of a tune becomes the way, like the new way that everybody plays that tune. So it definitely pays to do a bit of research. Like if you're going to do your own arrangement of this, you can do whatever you like. But if you were to sort of turn up at a jam session, it's likely that most players are expecting this tune starts on an E half diminished. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a different way of looking at this piece where everything relates to B flat. Right? All the harmony relates to B flat in some way. Right? Even this, you know, you might be thinking, well, it's a 2-5. It's going to D minor. Well, you could argue that D minor is a substitute for B flat. 3 is a substitute, and all we're doing is we're approaching it with a 2-5-1. That's a way of thinking of this from more of a B flat perspective. Or you can see this in the form of inversions. So, you know, this E minor 7, flat 5, if I move to the next inversion, looks very much like a G minor 6, which is exactly what this is actually. Okay, and what can you play over G minor 6s? Well, you have a choice. One choice is to think of that as like G Dorian. That's a choice. If you notice there, I put the major 7 in, creating the melodic minor scale, and that's where you get that natural second when seen from the perspective of E. So just to be clear there, what I'm saying is, over this chord, you can see this is G Dorian or G melodic minor, both of which are cool, you know, and I use both. If I'm hearing this type, that type of sound, then that's coming from the melodic minor perspective. But if I hear it more kind of, if I'm hearing this note of the next chord, which is the flat 2 in relation to E, then I'll hear it like G Dorian. Right? Now the beauty of seeing these things from this melodic minor perspective or the Dorian perspective is you can continue this over the A7, because G Dorian against an A7 gives you a Phrygian. Now Phrygian can be repurposed as a dominant scale, so instead of it being root, flat second, flat third, 4-5, flat 6, flat 7 and so on, we see it as being root, flat 9, raise 9. So it's got no 3, but it's kind of like a suspended sound, but it's got a flat 9 and a raise 9, and that can be used successfully against the A7 chord. Likewise, if I see it as melodic minor scale, I get this beautiful scale called Dorian flat 2. Right? So 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, natural 13, yeah, flat 7 and so on. So what that sounds like is those kind of sounds. 13 sus, flat 9, or equivalent but with a natural 13 against the A7. So we can see this as being G melodic minor over both, or G melodic or G Dorian over both, if you prefer. So another inversion for a minor 7 flat 5 chord is this. It could be, you could play it like so. This inversion. Now if I consider that to be the root for a moment, I get B flat, a 6, a major 3rd, and a sharp 11. Kind of what you'd associate with Lydian. From a B flat root. So I can see this as being part of B flat Lydian, rather than sort of like lots of different key centers. It's all B flat stuff. That's what my point that I'm trying to make. So that could be seen as like a kind of a B flat thing. So and same thing again, B flat Lydian can be used against that chord. Same relationship, B flat Lydian is G Phrygian, and it could be used against dominant chords. So that's possible. So our first chords, like that Lydian connection, then 2, 5, 1 in B flat. So that's B flat stuff, that's not a problem. Okay. Then we have this move. And what that is, that's making the 1 chord into a 7, which is a common move in jazz. 1, 1, 7. What do we expect when you hear? You often hear things like that, don't you? Where it goes down, do, 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 do. So that's 1, 1, 7, 4, 4 minor. That's a super common move in jazz. Guess what happens in Stella by Starlight? 2, 5. 1 is a 7 chord. There you go. 4. 4 minor. And it's equivalent, meaning, by that what I mean, E flat minor could be perceived as an A flat 7, 13. Let's come from coming at it from a melodic minor perspective, however you want to think of that. So really that's going, so 1 in the Lydian capacity, 1 in a major capacity, 1 is a 7 chord, 4, 4 minor. That's a 1 again, then more of that Lydian stuff, and this time it makes it to the D minor, which is a substitute for the 1. Then it goes, which is 1 minor now. So we've gone from like 1 major to 1 minor. We'll still B flat. Then to F. Now this is one, you could consider that to be a true key change. But in actual fact, it's the same relationship, is it not? A B flat Lydian has a B flat major, a D minor, a F major as well. So it could be perceived from that perspective, or you could think of it a move to F, which is related. It's only 1 step away in terms of key changes around the cycle from B flat, so that's still connected really. So and then that move again. Then this is a move as if we're going to the relative minor. As if you'd expect to go to G minor there, but in this case it goes to a G7. So I've got a G7 flat 13, and that's a secondary dominant to take us back to C minor, which puts us straight back into the B flat world. That's what that does. Then we jump to 4 minor, but it's equivalent chord. So when you see an A flat, a flat 7 chord dominant, that's associated with E flat minor going to an A flat, sometimes called the backdoor changes. So instead of going 2, 5, 1, we can go 4, flat 7, 1. Yeah, so that little section again. Secondary dominant, 4 minor, then back to the 1 again. Okay, and then the last little set of cadences. What this is, we have to look forward in jazz harmony very often. So instead of reading from left to right as we conventionally do, we can read from right to left and see where is it that we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to B flat. So we can get to B flat with a 2-5-1, C minor, F7, B flat. But how do we get to C minor or C? Well, we can get to it with a 2-5-1. Okay, from D. How do we get to D? Well, from a 2-5-1. And this sort of cascading set of 2-5s, and that's what happens at the end. We start with that Lydian connection, E half diminished, G minor. And again, you can play whatever you want over that. You play A altered, you could keep on the G minor, it's fine. And then it's the exact same relationship, the tone down, D half diminished or F minor, melodic minor or Dorian, depending if you want. If you want that type of sound, and you can play G altered there. And then we have the same thing again. F7. there's sort of deceptive cadences in the fact that you're usually expecting that to be a minor chord in B flat major, but it folds up very nicely. You generally find minor generally works a little bit better over major than major works against minor, because we're so used to hearing this thing happening. Minor going up, much more so than hearing it the other way around. But you know, never say never, I think, is good advice. Okay, so that's hopefully a little bit of a glimpse into what's happening with the harmony. The melody also gives you a clue, because the melody line is basically B flat major scale with just 2 exceptions. Now, it's really valid that you know where those exceptions are. So essentially, you've got major scale, now come, there, there, there. At that point, that's not the major scale anymore. What is it? What's the raised 4? So that's giving us a little clue, this Lydian connection. Or major. There is the other outside note. So there's only 2 instances. There's a sharp 4 and there's a sharp 5. That's it. Everything else is B flat major scale. So that gives you a little bit of a glimpse into where the harmony's coming from, I think. Now, a really good thing to be able to do, and this is how I'll end with this Stella by Starlight, just a brief look at this tune, is imagine trying to play the melody line. And ask yourself, what bass note happens at that point? See what I'm doing? So I'm making an analysis between where's the melody and where's the harmony. And what's kind of unusual with Stella, and another reason why it's quite a tricky tune, is sometimes these extensions are not what you might expect them to be. So that's actually the 4th of the E half diminished tonic. 4th again. 9. 13. And finally, we've got like a conventional, like a 5th or a 3rd or 7th or what have you. So you find a lot of the time with this tune, you're hearing the 4th. That's kind of an interesting one where the 3rd becomes the 5th, and then another 4th. Against all over it's all over this tune, the idea of using the 4th as a melody note. So I think that might have even, we can only guess into the eyes or the mind of the composer. But that's definitely, it's happening enough times for it to be more than a coincidence, I would say. So that's hopefully something that might be of interest to you. There was something I meant to mention before after tune up. I was going to talk a little bit about like 2 little techniques that I use to avoid a little bit of pressure. Filming can be quite stressful, particularly if you only get one pass at it, as usually I do on these Sunday Q&As. Today I've had a few more. I've had the luxury of having a few more attempts at this. But sometimes that can be a sticky wicket as well, because the idea that you can take more takes means you take more takes. There's something that's really polarising about knowing you've got one shot at something. But anyway, so my two thoughts are, a trick that I learned from Borelli Legren, from watching him play close up, is in between phrases, when Borelli plays, you see him picking, and then he takes his thumb off the back of the pick and completely sort of almost like bounces his hand, so you see this kind of thing. He's so relaxed with his picking hand that he can afford to take his thumb off the pick and just let the pick rest there with no tension whatsoever. And I find that is, when I do that, I sometimes make a conscious effort to do it. If I'm tensing up, if I can feel myself getting stiff or beginning to get stressed, I'll say, take the thumb off the pick. And it almost like resets your posture, or my picking posture, and lets the steam out. it really helps in terms of trying to be relaxed and play with dynamics and control. So that might be something that might help. It's a silly little thing, but you know, sometimes these little things, you know, they make a difference. You know, they really make a difference. The other thing that's important, excuse me, is you need to have a pick that doesn't slip about and move around. Because if it does, then you'll grip it tighter. And then the weird thing about it is sometimes just gripping something tighter will mean that you'll actually physically feel more stressed because you're adopting a stressful posture. You know? So the fact that, you know, for example, these picks, Killy's picks, Killy and Lawrence's picks, I've got these little grips in them, and the indentation based on the Salmins tailpiece, I think, means that they don't move around, so you can hold it much lighter than if I was playing something that was just clear plastic, or whatever it might be, whatever material these things are made out of, which is slipping about, so you've got to grip hold of it for dear life. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is, what I do, you probably noticed, I'm sure, is we'll often sort of stare away from the guitar, you know, often into space, you know, looking away. I find that I play much more melodically if I'm not looking at my fingers. If I'm looking at the guitar, not only does it sort of feel a little bit more stressful, but I also tend to play more pattern-based things, and maybe you'll find you do the same. Whereas if you're listening to what you're playing, rather than watching what you're playing, it can often be a more musical experience, rather than something which is where you're playing patterns and shapes that you know are going to work, rather than what's the musical outcome going to be. So I just thought to share those ideas with you, and that can be our next section. Okay. And we're back. So it's kind of interesting doing this in sections, and doing it the morning after as well. Yeah, it feels different because it's not live, but I'm hoping that you'll appreciate. I wanted to just keep content up there, because what we're doing this week is going to relate to what we're going to we'll look at next week. So, and here's where that section takes place. Jack asked me about building up vocabulary. How do you go about developing vocabulary? And really, I've got a couple of thoughts on this. And again, you know, as I've said in previous weeks, I'm not claiming to be, you know, a leading authority on any of this stuff. I'm just sharing an opinion of someone who's been doing it for quite a while, and hopefully, you know, there might be some food for thought in there, and it might help you. But the main principal areas are listening. That's maybe the first and most important one. And then the second area is getting as much mileage as possible out of any one idea, because it's really about theme and variation. Where I was definitely guilty of when I first learned to play jazz was just learning licks and thinking that it was just licks strung together somehow. The problem with that is you run out of them very, very quickly. So what feels like a reasonable vocabulary of lines and phrases to exploit sometimes is blown by the third tune in. You know, if you're taking long solos and you're expected to play 2 1-hour sets or what have you, maybe night after night, where the players that you're playing with will recognise when you're repeating yourself over and over again. It forces you to think about things in a different way. So I deal much more now with concepts than absolute licks and lines. That doesn't mean to say that there's not licks in there. There are, but they're much smaller and they're fragmented, and they can be combined in different ways. So just because you start on a particular musical idea doesn't mean the outcome is already decided in advance. That's my definition of a lick, actually, is when you start a phrase and you know that it's going to end in a certain way. That's a lick, basically. Whereas if you take a phrase and you can manipulate it in real time, then that's like more like a motif, and that's kind of a subtle difference, but it's a difference nonetheless, and that's what jazz musicians are doing. So, you know, I know, kind of like a joke, you know, if you said, you know, show me some licks, and some jazz guys will go, I haven't got any, you know, I don't play licks. Okay, well, show me some thematically developed motifs you can develop. Oh, I've got loads of them, you know. I think, well, what's the difference? It's just a matter of size. That's what that is. And also the idea that, you know, they can be combined in different ways. So with this in mind, it's quite a big topic, so I'm just going to plant the seed so that we've got something that we can develop next time around. And I'm just going to play a really simple phrase, and this phrase is in the key of D minor. The phrase will be... That's our phrase, yeah? what's interesting about this phrase is it's got a little chromatic enclosure. Starts on the 9, so that's an important thing. What degree does it start on? Goes to the 11. Major 3rd, 9, minor 3rd. And there we play the 5, the flat 5 or the raised 4. It's a chromatic embellishment. And ends on the root. So importantly, it doesn't start on the root but ends on the root. And I play it in different octaves and try and find that all over your instrument wherever you can. Okay, and we're going to take that idea next week and we're going to develop it in lots of ways. So seeing how that could be a minor lick, or it could be a half diminished lick, or an altered lick, or a dominant lick. Major even, you know. Could be major, or could be used against 2-5-1s or what have you. So, and then that idea is something that we're going to really develop. So get that under your fingers. So I'm giving you this kind of a week in advance to get that under your fingers. And the exercise that we are going to do this week that I want you to work on is be able to put it through the cycle of fourths. So you can play this in D minor. To G minor. So there I have to ask myself, it's in G minor, it starts on the 9, where do I begin? A. Then the next key would be C minor, where do I begin? On D. I have to find that. And then we go to F minor, B flat minor, so on. So make certain that you can put it through the entire cycle, all 12 keys, and that there's no blind spots. But you wouldn't want to be in a scenario. It's better to learn, and this is this idea of expanding by working in the margins if you're playing, rather than everything being a fresh and complete new idea, but you only get so far with them. It's much better to work on one idea and push it through and really develop it. So rather than having, say, 10 or 50 lines that you can play, but they only work in a fixed scenario, like they only work over a 2-5-1 in A, or this one works in A minor, or what, and only there. It's better to maybe have one idea that you can play in all these different situations, because then you see the potential of any idea. Because once you've done it with one thing, you can do it with anything else. So I'm just using this as a teaching device, that particular phrase. What we're going to do next week, we can do with whatever it is that we've got. You know, pretty much anything can be expanded upon in a similar method. So in preparation for this, just learn that phrase, please, and be able to play it through all 12 keys, and be able to do that pretty promptly as well. That's something that's important. So maybe get a click on the go, metronome on the go, which puts a bit of pressure on you to be able to do these things in time and, you know, on demand when we want them. Okay, that's the next area. So the final topic that I want to look at today is it's entitled, it's quite a mouthful this, voice-led superimposed arpeggios. Okay, and what they're very useful for, these are for when tackling chords that don't on first glance seem to be connected. So I'm going to use as a teaching device for this particular section, I'm going to use a chord progression that consists of 4 chords, only 3 different chords however. And it comes from the Herbie Hancock tune Cantaloupe Island, but you hear a gazillion tunes that have similar kind of movements where, you know, a minor chord goes to another minor chord and it's not related, or a dominant chord goes to wherever it might go. You know, A7 goes to E flat 7, or A7 goes to C7, or C minor goes to G flat minor, or whatever, F sharp minor. And on first glance you might think, well, that's quite tricky to play over, and you tend to approach each chord in an independent way, and then the music doesn't seem to flow through the changes. It just feels like it stops and starts each time the harmony changes. So this is a way that we can use voice leading to help us to find connections. Okay. So the first thing to do is to figure out what notes are in the chords. So I've got a little chart here which I'll hold up to screen in a second. But F minor, of course, is the notes F, A flat, C, and E flat. Okay. F, A flat, C, and E flat. D flat 7 is the next chord in that sequence. Usually with sharp 11. And that's D flat, F. There's an F in the previous chord, yeah? So there's an F in that chord. A flat. Well, the A flat connection is there as well. And then a C flat. I know it's a B natural, but C flat if we go by the enharmonic conventions. So there, what we've got there is a kind of a connection, whereas you've got C in one chord and then C flat in the next. It's still connected. Okay. And then we go to our D minor. We've got a D. So in principle we've had a C in this chord, a D flat, and then a D. So there's a connection. You got an F. Once again, they've all got an F. Every one of those chords has an F. And then an A, where we have an A flat twice, and now so that's like going A flat, A flat, A. And a C. We've seen that before. That was in the first chord, so kind of a C, C flat. Back to C again. This is making sense. So what I've done is I've generated a chart here which has those notes on them. So there's an F minor, D flat 7, D minor, back to F minor. Okay. And for each of the degrees, so F minor is F, A flat, C, E flat. D flat is D flat, F, A flat, C flat. D minor is D, F, A, C. That's what's in the chord. And F minor is F, A flat, C, E flat. I've placed the type of chord that you find in that location from the associated harmony. So for a minor chord you get a minor, a major, a minor, and a major. So by that what I mean is, if I build a chord from those degrees, F minor would be F minor. But then if I keep that arpeggio going, if I extend it by one note, what I've actually got there is an A flat major 7 against F minor. And if I keep going again, I'll get that's C minor over there. Or is it A flat major 9? Or is it F minor 11? They're all part of the same connected scale, if you like. And then on top of that, I would have a C major. An E flat major. So the choices over a minor chord are from the root, minor, from the third, major, from the fifth, minor, from the seventh, major. Okay, and that's the same for the D minor chord. D minor, F major, A minor, C major. Okay, so this is kind of common superimposition ideas, but for most of us we only deal with it in a static situation. We go that far, but we don't see how these things can connect when you put it through a chord progression. That's what I'm implying here. Okay, now the D flat 7, I'm going to treat this as coming from melodic minor scale. It's coming from the A flat melodic minor scale. So you need to know what's in the A flat melodic minor scale. And what we've got is from D flat, you've got D flat 7, you've got F half diminished, you've got A flat minor major 7, and then you've got C flat major 7 sharp 5. So that's the stack from that particular chord. Although I'm actually going to borrow the E flat as well, because A melodic minor scale, A flat melodic minors, A flat minor major 7, B flat minor 7, C flat major 7 sharp 5, D flat 7, E flat 7. I'm going to borrow that E flat 7. F half diminished, G half diminished, and so on. So it's useful to know the ladder, if you like, of arpeggios that belong in that scale. Okay, and we're going to draw from them. So the idea being here is, when I look at this diagram, let me just hold this closer to the camera. I'm going to hold it there, leave it there for a few seconds, see if you can get some light onto it. Oh, it's actually reversed. Oh, brilliant. My apologies. I'm hoping that this can be reversed. You can reverse this. I'll have a mess around with this in the video. I didn't notice that. This is one of the things of not doing it on Facebook. Facebook automatically reverses it. So for this week, I'm actually right-handed. Amazing. Yeah, I've learned to play the guitar that well the other way around, just in 7 days. Okay, so what we can do with this is we can connect them together so that there's an F against all 3 chords. So first off, what I'll do is I'll record a little backing track, like an 8-bar loop. I'll just do each chord for 2 bars, just for the sake of brevity, just to keep things tight time-wise. Okay, so here we go. F minor, D flat 7, D minor, 2, 3, 4. Okay. D flat 7. You're going to hear me shouting the chords out for myself. There you go. Okay, so an F works against all 3. So F, 2, 3. So we have to ask ourselves, what type of arpeggios do we build off that F? So the first one would be F minor. 2, 3, 4. Then F flat 7. D minor. So ready? So the F minor 7. F major. So you can connect patterns. It's much more connected, yeah? Okay. So we can take another route. So we mentioned before the A flat connection. So the first chord has an A flat in it, minor third. The second chord has an A flat, the fifth, and the last chord has an A. So that could manifest itself as an A flat major against the F, an A flat minor major against the D flat, and an A minor against the D. And it sounds like this. That was A flat major 7. A minor 7. And on it goes, okay? See if there's any others we can find. Of course there are. So we go C. We got C minor against F. Then you've got that C flat against the C flat major 7 sharp 5 against the D flat. Then you've got C major 7 against press D minor. So that will be C flat. You can go up to D flat. C. Okay, then from E flat we can do E flat major 7. Borrow the E flat 7. F. Or D. There. One more time. So against F minor, E flat major 7. E flat 7. D flat. So what I'm hoping that this has given us is the concept of there being more than one way to play through a tune. So if we play 4 choruses through this set of changes, you could pick a completely different pathway for each one. So the important part of this, I'll see if I can find a way, I'm sure there is a way of flipping this video around. I will do that. So this is the chart that we're concerned with. I'm going to see if I can flip it around once I'm in the software, edit software. Okay, and we're looking at finding pathways that move from left to right, or currently from right to left, but hopefully that'll be changed in editing. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for this week. I hope you enjoy these ideas. I hope this makes sense. Apologies for having to do this again, but I figure it's important to get these things right and make certain that everything works. I'll see you next Sunday, and hopefully there'll be no gremlins. Week 13, eh? I don't generally believe in stuff like that, you know. But anyway, hopefully you're staying safe. You're not going crazy in lockdown. Things seem to be getting better in some regards. Still a bit confused in others. Yeah, take care of yourself. Any questions? Please post. I'll put a link in Facebook and put this on YouTube. Please post any questions for next week in the comments. Get in touch with me. I'm easy enough to find. Okay, see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.